to contemplate these words. They're not just words from anyone. They're from the very loving God that knitted you in your mother's womb. They're from the very words that have created the vastness of our universe, the length and width of our days, all the creatures that you see. Maybe even look at your own little pets, and you realize that it's the heart of God that's throbbing in the very words of Scripture. And so it's good for us to pause and do what the Lord would like us to do, which is to just listen to Him. I mean, what is He saying to you in your life and in your circumstances right now this morning? And, one of the things that strikes me is, and in fact, I wish I could go around and do this right now, but I can't. Love to see what is on your wall in your bedroom. Like, what pictures do you have there? Like, what posters are there, or what photos are there? Wouldn't it be cool to just be able to look at all your brains right now and pop up like from your, like a little dot, like a cartoon type of thing, and all your images are up there, and I could just look around and get a virtual tour of your room right now. Not if your bed was made and the lamps knocked over and the dirty clothes are spewed around the ground. I don't mean that. Just like what's hanging on your walls. What are those images? One of the images that I have in mind is one of the first pictures that I have of me and my 3 sisters. I mean, there's now a lot more in my family than that, but it's me in a diaper. It is just a good picture for me to remind myself that I really haven't grown up since then. And there's other images in there that I enjoy as well. There's an image there of Jesus, of a dear friend who passed, and she's an aunt of a sister-in-law, and she just painted this beautiful Jesus ascending up to heaven. And then obviously I have an image of a picture of my hero, St. John Paul II, whose feast day we actually celebrate today. Kind of stinks that he gets trumped by the 29th Sunday of Ordinary Time. It sounds like such a boring thing, The feast of St. John Paul II, or the 29th Sunday of Ordinary Time. Anyway, 29 wins out over JP2. But the thing is that, so there's these different images that I have, or if you go into my office, you'll see the image of the Steelers kneeling down, not in protest, but in prayer. That's really a dignified reason to kneel down. And it was in the locker room as they're praying the Our Father. And at any rate, it's interesting to see that these images, especially one of the dearest images now in my heart, is a picture of me with my dear grandfather at my ordination day. Images are ways to provoke the presence of an event or a person. And perhaps the pictures and the posters and the icons that we have in our rooms and in our houses, maybe in your purses or in your wallets. When you look at them, they provoke a presence. And when Jesus is challenged here by these 2 groups, one kind of these quote-unquote faithful Jewish Pharisees and this other Jewish crew that was tied into Herod, the leader, and they brought him an image. And Jesus asks them, as they're asking about this temple this tax, well, whose image and inscription is on this coin? Because, again, the image provokes a presence. And in fact, the very phrase that Jesus says, whose image and inscription is on this, that word really in Greek, it's icon. And when you look back to the Hebrew moment where God creates man and woman, and he says, in their image, the word that's used is in my icon, I created them in my image and likeness. It provokes a presence. And what's so ironic about this is that the very presence of seeing Caesar Augustus on this coin, and then the kicker is on the back, is there's this inscription, which would say, Caesar Augustus Tiberius, and then this humble little paraphrase underneath it, the son of the divine Augustus. So on one side is the king's face, and on the other side is the king calling himself the Son of God. Could there be an irony more drastic than a coin which was trying to make tribute to this king by calling himself the Son of God, and the very icon of God, the very Son of God, being confronted here? And so it just provokes, I could imagine in the heart of Jesus Christ. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you want to jump out of the pages and just, smack the person in front of you. I would imagine Jesus would have looked at these guys and been like, oh my, do you guys realize what you're falling into here? Now, he's Jesus, I'm not, so the difference is obvious. But it's even worse. Jesus, it says here, there's this little insight, and maybe this was something that you could go back and I don't know if you have the guts to pray about this, but it says here, knowing their malice, Jesus said. In other words, about halfway through this scripture, there's these three words, knowing their malice. I've never had the guts to pray on this before, but boy, do you honestly think that whatever we do and whatever our deepest thoughts and intentions are, that God doesn't know them? It's just one of those quick insights that you're like, wow, maybe I need to distract myself more with the Steelers and the Penguins so that I don't realize that God knows what's deepest in the heart of my own conscience, right? But at any rate, Jesus, knowing their malice, in other words, it's just crazy. These Jews, when they set up their whole entire system, God was like, I will be your God and you will be my people. You won't need a king. You won't need a ruler because your God is. And for 40 years, they walked around the desert and God was trying to prove to them, you do not need a king. We are a clan and you're a part of my clan. So why would you need a king? And so this tribe, these 12 brothers and their grouping, which was the Jewish people, they all started to look at the other kingdoms and say, well, everybody else has a king. Well, we need a king. Isn't that one of the worst arguments you've ever heard? I just think about my parents. Everybody's going to the Michael Jackson concert, Mom, Dad. I want to go too. Everybody else gets to stay up at 12 o'clock at night. I want to as well. Everybody else gets to go to our movies. Why don't I get to go as well? You ever hear that argument before? I think we all gave it to our parents at some time in our lives. And Jesus hears that same argument, and he's just like, man, don't you realize I am your God? I'm your creator. To have no gods before me. And so here they get into the crux of the matter where they're not just trying to call Caesar their king. They're trying to say that really, Jesus, we're just going to try to trap you here so as to get rid of you. And Jesus, obviously, in his tremendous wisdom, says, repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. There's a doctor of the church, his name is St. Lawrence of Brindisi. And you always get bonus points as a priest if you can ever quote a doctor of the church, because nobody has any idea what I'm talking about when I say that. It has nothing to do with medicine. This guy probably never even studied medicine. But he's a doctor of the church because the doctrine at which he wrote about absolutely is confirmed in the heart of the truth of Jesus Christ through Scripture. And so there's some of them dotted along. Another one is like St. Catherine of Siena. Anyway, so he says this about the image of the coin. To each must be given what belongs to him, for it teaches that authority is twofold, earthly and human, heavenly and divine. Thus, human laws and the law of God. The coin bearing Caesar's image and inscription must be given to Caesar. The one stamped with the divine image must be given to God. We bear in our image the glorious face of God, because we're made in the image and likeness to God. And so you, O Christian, writes this dear St. Lawrence in the 17th century, are God's tribute money. We are a little coin bearing the image and likeness of our divine Creator. And so when we contemplate this, we realize that what Jesus Christ is really after is allowing us to see that we're created in the very image and likeness of his Father, of this triune loving God. And so where can we find at St. Simon and Jude this great coin, this treasure, the treasure of who we are as Christians? Well, I would submit that one of the greatest treasures we had, I just got to go over the last few days. You can see a picture in the front with our dear care minister and Ginny, and you can see in these other pictures here some pictures of some other faces and names in our parish who are our homebound friends and family members. some who have lost their hearing, others who have lost their ability to walk, others who have lost a spouse, others who have a child who they're celebrating because after 30 years in the Navy will be coming back home, others who simply for one reason or another can't really leave their home. Here are where the true treasures of St. Simon and Jude lie, the true coins. Fine, if you took up the 19 acres here and you added up the building and the bricks and all that stuff, you'd probably get a couple $1 million, right? But where is the true treasure of our church? Another St. Lawrence, not the St. Lawrence who I quoted before, he grew up, he was a deacon. So just like that guy behind me, Deacon Jim. Well, this guy was Deacon Lawrence, and he lived in the year 258, a couple years before Deacon Jim was born, A.D. And on August 6th, the Caesar at the time, the king, and we're talking about 250 years after Jesus, his name was Valerian, and he decided to slice the head of the Pope off. Kind of got up one morning and said, I'm sick of this Pope, he's done. So his head rolled, and so this Caesar thought it'd be a good idea to take all the treasures of the church and use them in his empire for money and funding. And so he goes to Lawrence after he cuts the head off the Pope and says, all right, Lawrence, now you're kind of the deacon in charge of all the treasures, bring them to me. And he goes to give you 3 days to round up the chalices, the ciboriums, the candlesticks, the vestments, and you can imagine all these tremendous amount of money that was in the church and the Vatican and all these different places. And so Lawrence went around for 3 days, and you can imagine that the emperor coming out, and he probably even needed sunglasses because he was worried about getting all the glare from the gold hitting his eyes, That was a joke. They didn't really have sunglasses then. Anyway, so he's up on this balcony. He's about to walk out and look out and see all the vast gold chalices and things. And he walks out there, he opens up the curtain, and he looks down, and he sees a bunch of people who are crippled, lame, elderly, and sick. And Deacon Lawrence proudly stands and shows all these vast people out there. And he says, my dear king, these are the true treasures of our church. I think what Christ is asking us to do today is to discover the true icon of God and those who are our grandparents and those who are sick and those who are suffering, because that's where you truly can identify the treasure coin of God in our world today. I don't know about you, but maybe spending 5 minutes in prayer for those who are sick and elderly and forgotten might be a good thing to do this week. Or maybe even spending 5 minutes writing a card to a dearly beloved family or friend who perhaps could use a little cheered up. Or maybe even go to the extreme of going to somebody's house and visiting somebody and recognizing how the icon of God shines through those who suffer the most.